just keeps on coming. Welcome to the Breakfast Lounge, your daily talk show on 102.7 FM, featuring special guests with your host.
Good morning again, and it's time now for the Breakfast Lounge here on 102.7 FM with yours truly, Lady Grace. My viewers on my Facebook page, you see my guests? Well, my listeners, of course, I announced it earlier this morning that my guest this morning will be the Minister of ECYS, Minister Melissa Gums. And it's quite a pleasure for me to see her after such a long time.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm good, Grace. Good morning.
Yeah.
How's 2026 treating you?
So far so good. I ain't making no fuss yet. I haven't done all my
Holding your corner, as they would say.
haven't done all my physicals yet, but I'm working on that right now. Yeah. Minister, first and foremost, again, welcome back to the Breakfast Lounge. You are on a hiatus, but of course, you're putting your messages out there. You're on your social media page every Tuesday. If possible.
Yes.
And this morning on the front page, of course, we're talking Sister Marie Laurent School. That's the first question. That's the first topic I want to discuss this morning with you, because this week you brought the country up to speed concerning school upgrades, and more specifically, the Sister Marie Laurent's primary school in the region.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that this reconstruction process has faced several setbacks where tenders are concerned, and that there is finally movement on getting the work started. However, it took a really long time to get to this point. Separate from the tendering process, I want to ask you, did neglect play a part in any capacity of the reconstruction of this school?
You know, Grace, you always come shooting right out the gate. Yes, no, I definitely think it has. One thing that I've noticed since being sworn in as minister is that, in particular with these trust fund projects, there needs to be a certain amount of pressure and attention placed from the top go down. I came in and met a completed tender process that then the contract had to be canceled, and then we had to retender. And I said, these are the timelines I would like us to be able to adhere to. I understand that, we have standards to meet in terms of the documentation and such, but there can be a lot more done to make sure that everybody moves on their part sooner rather than later. So I was very happy when we got to demolition stage, because it made the time basically had the demand, and now with construction, things seem to be on track. So I'm looking forward to seeing this same pace continue, not just with Sister Marie Laurent, but also with the library and Charles Leopold Bell School in Cold Bay, because I think both those districts between Mid-Region and Cold Bay need to have their schools back.
The Charles Leopold Bell School in Cold Bay, when does the construction start there?
That contract should be up for signing, I believe, this month, but I do have a visit plan to the NRPB to get a full comprehensive update on where that lies with those two particular projects.
All right, mentioning the word neglect now, do you have any confidence that the contractor that's on the bid actually will ultimately produce the project in a timely manner?
I believe so, yes. We followed, we being myself, my cabinet, and of course our point person for MECIS, Ms. Aurélie Boyrat, followed the tendering process, the technical review, the financial review. The company satisfied those with very little hiccups. So I do have full confidence, and they've already themselves started their mobilization process early on. So that is really the point where you may encounter delays or other such issues. So the fact that they were already kind of on the ball for themselves, basically what they needed to do, what they needed to have in place, not just from a construction perspective, but also from a permit perspective with VSA and such. I think that already showed a different approach, and so I have full confidence that they'll get it done.
Now, if I can recall, Minister, It was during a previous budget debate where your ministry, alongside several others, experienced cuts. And of course, no minister likes to see their budget trimmed in any capacity.
Mhm.
Now, in what particular area of your ministry do you desire that additional revenue can be placed to execute certain tasks that usually isn't affordable or afforded to that specific area?
I think all of them. I think, I've said it before, Grace, education and all aspects of my ministry, whether it's education, culture, youth, or sport, it requires a heavy investment, and maybe you don't see the return right away. From the sports perspective, you need to invest from a young age. In other countries, you see it starts at a school level, whether it's pee wee football, pee wee baseball, but that needs a heavy investment, because then you need to go from there. Then you need to go into your elementary and secondary. Perhaps if you're in a country that has it, tertiary. But if you're in a country that doesn't, for us, we would have to establish those agreements and relationships with universities abroad that have sports built into their program. Athletics, for example. At my university, we had at the time soccer, baseball, softball. But that's maybe not something that you see pay off until those later years. And I talked about it a bit on my live stream this week, where we're a country that's very much conditioned to expect instant gratification. On the education side, we want kids that don't know how to read on Monday to know how to read by the following Monday, without knowing the investment, not just from a money perspective, but from a time and attention perspective that has to be put into getting them to that point where they are reading at a certain grade level. From the culture perspective, if you blend in the orange economy, that also takes heavy investment that maybe you don't see the return right away, but with consistent attention, consistent focus, you will eventually see that return. But if we continue in this I want it today for tomorrow attitude, you're never going to get to that point. And I think that's something that we have to, recondition our people to understand at all levels, because it's I think also too, from a ministry perspective, if I think back over the last 20 years, you see that maybe things are started, you don't see the results in the way that you want the first time around. And then it's like, okay, let's shelve it because it didn't work. As a Virgo, I understand perfectionism. I understand the need for for perfection, but ultimately that doesn't come without consistent investment, consistent attention, and not just because you don't see the result, the perfect result come out in the first 6 months, that you shelve it and say, we gotta try something else. No. Sometimes you just have to keep at it, and of course with your benchmarks, because if you're trying something for 3 years and you're not seeing anything, then you have to pivot and have your assessments along the way. And I think we struggle with that a bit. Even with last week, for example, the results on the EGRA EGMA,
Right.
Yeah, it's an urgent matter and it deserves urgent attention, but urgent does not mean hasty. Urgent does not mean you throw money at it, or you throw whatever at it and then you hope for the best. These are systemic issues that need a deep-rooted cleanup, basically. So
Now, stepping into this ministry, besides, we're going to get talking about those results that were published last week in the paper, but stepping into this ministry, what was it like when you got into the ministry? What were some of the bottlenecks, things that you saw that were not handled over the years, that basically is falling in your lap now and you got to fix it?
Yeah. Like I said, I think one of the main things that we encountered when we came in was projects that needed attention from the ministerial level. That's not just the Trust Fund projects, that's also TWO. I have to say, ECYS is a ministry, and I give credit to the departments and the divisions and their heads, their management teams, because I think in spite of the lack of attention, in spite of the politics, they have managed to make do with what they have been given. And I have to commend them every day on that.
And this is due to budget constraints.
This is due to budget constraints. It's due to, you come in and we're going to the right, and then ultimately someone else comes in and we're going to the left. What I made clear to everyone is that if something is already in progress, if it's working, if it needs tweaking, we will tweak it. But I'm not in the business of just cutting things that seem as if they're already further along the way and that they are going to be something that is beneficial to the country. There have been some things that we came in and met with, like, no, we need that. There are other priorities that need to be addressed first. There are severe foundational cracks, not just in this ministry, but I think across the board in many ministries. So ultimately, it's kind of like you're trying to find ways to build from the ground up, fix the foundational cracks. Because if you keep building on top of a bad foundation, and I said that many times over my 4 years in Parliament, if the foundation is cracked, you cannot continue to build on top of it. I'm not an engineer, but I feel like that would be a bad decision to make. So for me, it's we pick a direction, we stick in a direction, and also decision making. I think one of the things that has hampered us the most is because it may step on some toes, because it may alienate a particular voter base. Many decisions have not been taken, especially when it comes to education. And for me, might make me a bad politician, but votes cannot be the reason why we don't make tough decisions that impact children. I think if my SG is listening, she's gonna laugh, but I always say, I don't have kids, I have a cat. I cannot care more about people's children than they do. And if we don't set aside politics at a certain point in time and just make the tough decisions that will, in the long run, benefit the children of St. Martin, then I don't know what any of us are really doing now.
Right. President of the University of St. Martin yesterday made a statement, I believe it was on Monday,
Mm-hmm.
regarding the capacity of students. Actually, he's looking at, hey, this is a local teaching institution, of course, learning institution. We would like to see between 300 to 500 students making use of the St. Martin University. But we're only looking at what? Last year you had 160, this year you had 150. What are we doing enough to actually attract local students or students from the neighboring islands to come and basically do their tertiary studies here in St. Martin?
Well, I think from the USM perspective, I think it's important to note that with the law on higher education, now you are able to take the steps to get to an actual full-fledged university. USM confers bachelor's degree essentially from the University of the Virgin Islands. I believe that is also an example of a decision being made and then a pivot being made because, persons had a different idea politically where they wanted to go with it. USM was actually intended to be a hospitality institute. That was an idea conceptualized before I was even a thought in my parents' mind. And then somewhere along the way, it was decided to, we want our own university because you had the University of Netherlands Antilles. And that's fine. But I think we look at things sometimes and we decide we want it without considering the investment needed to get it. Running a university is no small feat, especially a four-year university. It takes a substantial investment on everybody's part. And ultimately, USM is not a state-owned entity. So we can do what we can with the subsidy we provide. And I have had this conversation with them as well as a board and as a management team that now with the higher education ordinance, I encourage them to find funding to grow themselves to that point because the government does not have it. And I'm very straightforward with that with everyone. I think it's important to tell the truth of the fiscal reality facing St. Martin, and in particular facing ECYS as a ministry. So I've done, my part to engage with private sector, to engage with partners abroad, to see what funding opportunities are available to everyone. But then that work has to be in tandem with each other. It cannot be, just the ministry pulling it. Everybody has to kind of get on board. And this is something I've made clear to all subsidized entities. It is the way we have structured education has led to many of the challenges we face in education right now. And that is also from a resource perspective.
Yeah.
So in terms of attracting students from elsewhere, that doesn't just take me. It doesn't just take them. It also takes justice. When you go to the States, we have to get visas, we have to get, there are certain requirements we have to adhere to. And you also have to make sure that international students are able to do that and to adhere to the laws, the immigration laws that we have in St. Martin as well. So it's a wider conversation than just ECYS. And I look forward to continue to have that conversation with them.
And good that you mentioned visas, student visas, because with all that's going on in the United States and around the globe right now, we have students that are studying in the US currently, the ICE and everything else.
Yep.
How are our students doing?
I believe they're doing, it's a manageable situation so far, but we caution them, and I know Division Study Financing also cautions them to be aware. Being aware of your immigration status is something we are all told, even before the current situation facing anybody really, because it's not restricted to certain groups that it used to be restricted to. It's everybody's game. So it's always something that you have to be very aware of. And we, when last year the decision was made to cancel the Latin American Caribbean Scholarship Program in the state of Florida, where the majority of our students are. We had an online meeting with them, where I told them, this is not something new that I have to tell you. You have to be aware of how you behave in the US. We were always told, try not to get arrested, try not to fall in challenges with the law, because you could lose your immigration status and be sent back. And they're not just sent back, face a ban actually from entering the US. Now, of course, it goes a bit beyond that. And we caution students all the time. Florida has some spots that are progressive. And I think we look at Miami as what all of Florida is. That is not what all of Florida is. And I think to make it clear to them as well that, you have to be on your P's and Q's. And it's unfortunate, but it's something that was always there, and now it's just kind of ramped up. But they're doing well. Those who were grandfathered in by Florida State and other schools, are completing their studies. I believe we have 5 seniors or so that should be graduating this May. So they're still doing well. And of course, we've been working on signing MOUs with schools in Canada now to kind of get out of that panhandle reality, as well as a new MOU with a university in Connecticut and one in New Jersey, as well.
Florida Panhandle.
The Florida Panhandle, yeah.
Florida Panhandle. Okay, that was better, right. Now, Minister, one of the things the Prime Minister mentioned here on an interview a while back was that the lack of personnel across the board in various ministries and the Council of Ministers. But this time, let me just spin this differently for you rather. How equipped are our schools in terms of teacher capacity? And I'd like to summarize the shortage there as well. You can tell me if that is indeed the case, that there's a shortage of teachers, and what mechanisms, Minister, are you seeking out to address those shortages if they indeed persist?
The shortage in teaching, and I said this yesterday as well, it's global, and that is the challenge that we're facing. And it's been something that has been steadily increasing in terms of the shortage, right? I remember about 15 years ago, I was speaking to a friend who is a teacher in Canada, and she decided to leave and go teach in South Korea for 3 years, because you actually make more money than teaching in Canada.
Okay.
So if Canada is facing a challenge with holding on to its teachers, and that was 15 years ago, I can only imagine what it's like now. We have persons teaching in the Netherlands in different cities that also are facing challenges with staffing, whether in particular secondary schools with subject teachers, because of course you have your history teacher, your geography, etc. So it becomes a bigger challenge there. How to address that? I think myself and every minister of education in the region and in the world is facing that question. We can say that we want to build local capacity, but of course that means that teachers, especially for the secondary school level, would have to go on to do their masters. I know that we do find ways to facilitate that as ECYS via division study financing, but it's also about how do you get persons who are really interested in being teachers, because that's also a flip side of the coin. What you see a lot, and I credit my immediate predecessor, current MP Lewis, for mentioning it when I was in Parliament last week, is that you have a lot of teachers here and elsewhere that are there for the salary. There's a shortage, you always have a guaranteed job, but that to me is not why you should get into teaching. Teaching, I look at that as a calling. It really is something that speaks to you on a deeper level, where this is something you want to get into, where you're actually shaping and molding young minds. And I don't know if we want to just say, yeah, go and become a teacher to any and everybody, because you're going to definitely have a job if it's going to yield the type of results that we see coming out these days, regionally and internationally. Because one point I made clear as well last week is that these reading and mathematics assessments results is not just in math and they're struggling with them. It is region-wide. You have countries that have boasted fantastic mathematic performances in schools that are seeing it drop to maybe 34%. Speaking specifically of Guyana, Barbados, Jamaica, and so forth. And that's regional examples of a combination of a teacher shortage, a lack of interest in education in general, and the basic struggles. One thing I would like people to tell me though, because it's very hard to find gym teachers. And I don't know where that's coming from. And we see that having an impact on sports and sport development. And I think I'm always curious as to, why is that? I know schools here that have been trying to get a gym teacher for like 2 years now. And I don't know, as minister, how do we solve that? Because if you can't find it, if you are constantly recruiting and you're not getting any feedback, it speaks to a more systemic issue on a larger scale, and I think even we as Little St. Martin can address. So it's a multifaceted issue that I don't know if we can fix it here alone, because like I said, it's here, it's in Holland, it's in the States, where there's just a general shortage of these subject teachers that we keep seeing pop up. Okay. And I don't know if they're also doing like my friend and popping off to South Korea and deciding not to come here. But it takes more than me, and this is something we also discussed at the Vierlande Overleg in offhand, not official discussions, but more informal, where Aruba is also facing that challenge. As I mentioned, my then counterpart in the Netherlands, who himself was a relatively young minister and who himself was a former educator. He said, at a vocational level, we also are struggling in the Netherlands to find persons to teach, whether it's working with metals, whether it's carpentry. So yeah, it's if they are facing challenges, I can only imagine, for us, what we have to look forward to in the coming years in terms of staffing.
And you were speaking of sports here for a minute, that when you talk about seeking, qualified teachers, fitness teachers, just to work in the school, not how much, but do we monitor our athletes when they travel abroad? I mean, how do we go about that? I mean, we supply them with funding, government supplies them with funding, but we also monitor them.
Yes, so what I see happening most of all is the federations and associations themselves will monitor their athletes. For example, I want to give a shout out to Carlos Bryson Keynes, who ran an amazing leg on his relay race in Jamaica. He's at Jamaica College, which is a secondary school in Kingston. And when I watched the video, because they send the videos to me, I'm always super proud. So when I saw the video, I say, yo, that boy was blazing. So the association itself, shout out to Abdul, keeps up with the athletes that they know are away, placed at different schools. PSA as well, Omar Bobatui, keeps up with the basketball players that are at Dade Christian Academy in Florida or elsewhere in the US at different high schools and colleges. We ourselves don't officially track, I would say, but I do know Department of Sports also via the associations and the federations keeps touch on them, because we always try to celebrate their accomplishments on social media, shout them out, because I think that's important as well. That, they don't just go away and they're away. That they go away and we know what they're doing, we know what they're up to. So one thing about it, athletics will always keep me updated. Doesn't matter where in the world they are, I know what our runners and our track stars are doing. So
we have a team currently participating in the under 20 football competition
yes.
in Curacao.
Yes.
How well are they doing?
I got somebody just messaged me about it, as you said, but I didn't get to read the message.
Because the Angola and Guyana teams were disqualified. And you saw that fight.
I didn't see the fight. I heard about it.
I will send it to you.
Send it to me. Yeah, I heard about it and I said, "Oh no!" Anytime I hear that there was a fight, I'm like, once it's not us.
It was terrible.
Yeah. It's
and the thing about it is that Angola's so close, but the fact of the matter is that you can't imagine seeing a sport get to the point of it getting so physical.
Correct.
The kids under 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know when I played sport, we wasn't thinking about fight. We was thinking about basically, crying if we lose.
Being sad
and stuff like that.
And then I think is an I saw sometimes I when you scroll a couple minutes on TikTok, you come across like NFL teams or NBA teams that have themselves kind of incorporated, just wellness, emotional regulation.
Yeah.
How you feel the anger, but how do you handle it in the moment? And I think that's important. That's an important component that we kind of need to also instill in our athletes, because it's emotions can run high, but you are the one in control of yourself, basically. And as somebody who has played contact sports,
and
the coaches as well, you also have to, from a young age, get your players in line. Discipline, but emotional regulation. Okay, let me tell you, as someone who has played contact sports, I played basketball, I've played rugby. I've played rugby in the Netherlands. You will find moments. I can't say how anyone else would react to being jabbed in the throat and bitten in a sport match.
Yeah.
In the moment, I didn't do anything, but you really have to be able to walk away and catch yourself. And I think I didn't see the video. Send it to me so I
Send
can.
it to me.
I heard about it. I was just very happy that from what I see from our players, even at a young age, when I go to netball, when I go to basketball,
Mhm.
I see them. They feel the emotion, but then they are able to at least regulate themselves in the moment, and maybe you get a little shove, but it's not like an
Then
all-out
you
brawl,
get really physical at the same
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
too.
You get physical when you're playing, but then you leave it on the court. That's
Yeah.
the point,
But that was on the field.
Oh no, that was
Yeah,
yeah.
there was a lot
Now
of
that's
time.
unfortunate to hear
Yeah,
because
there
you never
was-
want to disappoint your country like that. I think too, because now you're disqualified.
Yeah.
Now you're out.
You pack up and
You got to pack
home.
up. You go back and
Mhm.
yeah, it's gonna be a long plane ride and a long ferry ride. Back
It will be the longest fight of your life.
back home. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. I got to reach out to my counterpart, man. See what
Yeah.
she's doing with
Because
that.
CONCACAF actually disqualified 8 players. I
Yeah.
believe it was.
Wow.
Yeah. But while we're on sports again, Minister, how are we coming along with the sports auditorium? The cooling section.
Yes. I believe the contractor was waiting on one document. I was told because TEAT is very thankfully from a budget perspective they are handling this project. We of course with NSI have oversight into it, and I believe that final piece of paper was supposed to be handed in this week, and then we should see some action on the ground. I told TEAT, once you keep NSI in touch, because of course you don't want to interrupt anybody's season. We also want to make sure that our lovely floor is protected. I was really happy to see with Business Hoops that floor. Every time I walk in, I have to smile because I'm so happy that we're there now. But yes, no, definitely the HVAC system. I said it got to be before Carnival. I hope,
Wow.
I hope that we get to that point. If
Okay.
not, definitely following April, we're gonna be able to be in there, chilling and cooling and breezing. And my next step, and I've discussed it briefly with NSI, is to try to find a public-private partnership that can then change out the seats. Because I know about you, but the older I get, the less I could sit.
I have to get up every time I'm done. But
Every couple of minutes, you got to get up,
You
do
gotta
a
get
little,
up,
do a little
move a
exercise,
little
and
bit.
stretch out,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
stretch out your
Oh.
knees. I say,
Oh, the knees.
yeah, especially for those former athletes where you're sitting down.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And it's good that you said that because as a former athlete myself,
Yeah.
the first thing that's going
No,
to
your
me-
first thing to go is your knees.
The
Again,
knees,
you hear I
right.
play basketball, I played
Mhm.
rugby.
Yeah.
I don't have knees.
I don't either. I have basically bone
Yeah,
rubbing on
a
bone.
meniscus, what? It doesn't exist.
Yeah. I played volleyball, I played basketball.
Oh, yeah.
And
Volleyball will do it every time.
Oh, man,
Volleyball will do
man.
it every time. No, but
Right.
it was so funny too with the for the Business Hoops. I have to say I had a great time commentating the celebrity game.
Again.
The celebrity game was interesting, as me and Marvin call it the Bengay Bowl,
The what?
the Bengay Bowl.
Then you go, oh, okay. I understand why.
Because I watched it and I said no boy, and now to go in the sit in those seats now,
Mhm.
you're done for. You're done for.
You gotta put the ice on.
So if there's any company listening, hit me up.
All right. Minister, you were splattered all over the paper with the headlines. Your presentation in Parliament concerning the results of the early grade reading
Yes.
and mathematics assessments,
Yeah.
and they were somewhat alarming. Not somewhat, they were very, very alarming.
Yes.
Now this speaks to a broader issue on the island that needs to be reflected or rectified rather, or addressed in some form, because it's not solely on the kids why these results are what they are today.
Correct.
Minister, what do you view or have identified so far as the main crux of the problem responsible for the underperformance in mainly basic subjects of our educational system?
It's twofold, I believe. One, and every school has highlighted this as a challenge to me, parental involvement. Parental involvement, just parental engagement, I think. That's one part of it. And also, I believe the way in which we even teach reading and literacy. When we were in school, for me, we had guided reading out loud, pairing your stronger students with your weaker students, even separating the stronger students so that the teacher could pay more attention to the weaker students and bring them along, challenging them with, if you see that they can read at their current grade level, challenging them with, more stringent books, a higher grade level, text. And I think just, giving them that time to read. I hear different, reports from different schools where some teachers will do it, some will not. So I think consistency is also a challenge, grade over grade. And this is a conversation that we had with school boards when we presented it to them, and school managers as well. And it's something that we will have a further conversation now that the results are public. We wanted to have our internal discussions first. That time in Parliament was about my 8th or 9th time seeing that presentation, and this time giving it myself. Because previously it was given by Division Head of Examinations, Yvette Halley, and I really appreciate her efforts in also getting this done, and also her efforts in including in last year's assessment Group 5, because then you see if there's been any progress, if there's been any improvement, because the Group 5 that was assessed was the Group 3 of 2023. And I think, that twofold approach is what is going to be needed. We also have to acknowledge, Grace, that for the last almost 10 years, we've not had a true library space to actually drive literacy in the community as a whole. And I think now we have, a decade of what was the impact of that on our children and also on our adults. Sometimes, I wonder, and I spoke about it briefly this week as well, if 43% of the children queried said that they are never read to at home, is it that they don't have time, which could be very much the challenge. Maybe parents don't have time to read, but I also know back in my day, students in my class that had parents that were working 3-4 jobs, but would make their child in the morning read the paper to them, or at least the first article on the front page. I had to do it with my dad. What the paper saying, so I know that is possible, but can the adults themselves also read is also a question. And so it puts into perspective, what are the struggles that we have with adult literacy, from a reading comprehension perspective. And that's an uncomfortable conversation to have because many persons do not like to admit it, but we all live in, the same community. I have been in situations where I'm asked by an adult, and I'm also an adult, but I mean someone older than me, much older than me, to help them in the ATM, because they can't recognize the numbers. They have their PIN written down on a Post-it. And, I help them and show them, how to do it. But what if it was somebody different, that came in to the ATM with them? You understand? So all of these are challenges I think that we have to face head on as a community. And persons have said, to put those results out there in the public like that, because you cannot address something if you don't know it. And I don't want people to think that, everything is, as they say in Dutch, cook and egg, because it's not. And you have to first be willing to say that it's not cook and egg to be able to face it and to address it and fix it. And it's not going to happen overnight. But I think there are small things that we can do as a community from now that next year, when we run this assessment again, this time including Group 7, which will have been last year's Group 5, that we do see some type of improvement in at least letter and number recognition, at least in oral reading fluency. Because if you are, the other day I was invited by Nicole De Weaver last week to participate in a conversation with Shaka Senghor, who's a New York Times bestselling author, writes about his time being in prison in the US, in a maximum security prison, the 7 years he spent in solitary confinement. And one thing that he said, being literate going into prison helped me improve my literacy while in prison and helped me through my time. And it helped me to change my purpose and my direction in life. But one thing he said was, I shouldn't have ended up where I ended up. I was literate. I knew, certain things, and I knew right better, right from wrong and such. And, it throws a lot of things into harsh relief, I think, for us. But I really appreciated that he said that to the CAFE students that were there. And I know that he also went up to Point Blanche to speak to some of our inmates. And, he said we need to make literacy cool again, because it's a gateway to a better life. It's a gateway to understanding life. People are less likely to be able to be taken advantage of because you could read and understand a contract. You could read and understand a pay slip. You could read and understand a ballot. You could read and understand a newspaper, and it impacts everything, I think, that happens in our community. So yeah, I look forward to continue to work with stakeholders and engage with them to also figure out how do we make literacy cool again. If it means that I gotta come into the breakfast lounge and read half an hour every day, because I remember those things being on the radio when I was younger. The KFC quiz, guys. We had to read a lot.
Yes,
You remember that?
quiz,
I used to win all the time.
Right.
But it's about also engaging media partners and how do we
Yeah.
improve these things as a community, because it is a community effort.
Right, and it's good that you mentioned that too, because it has to start in school also. Because growing up, I remember back in school we used to have competitions that actually, well, not competitions. Some companies used to
Yes.
have like, okay, you turn in 5 Friese Vlag labels,
Yeah.
and then you get a book.
You get a book,
You get
yeah.
a book, so
Yep.
you every time you want to buy a can of milk, you want
Yeah.
to save it off so that you could get a book. Or we used to ruilen,
Exchange,
exchange books,
Book exchange,
book
yeah.
exchange
In school.
yeah.
Yep.
stuff
And
like
again,
that.
the presence of a library, the presence of a bookmobile going around,
Yeah.
and you run on board and you take up a book. And I had
Mhm.
constant fights with that gentleman because I wanted to be reading the books on the top shelf. I've already read these, my guy. So I think it's, like I said, it's a community effort. And how do we make literacy and being literate cool again? Because it's about setting that foundation for a better life
Right.
and making sure that you, as much as possible, deter from a different path
Mhm.
that leads, up the hill.
Is language also the language of instruction also that plays a major role as well?
It does indeed. And I think that is a discussion that has been going on for quite some time. You do see that the results are impacted by language spoken at home versus the language that they're instructed in school.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you also see that certain students in the Dutch stream, who Dutch is not their first language, perform very well. I think it has a lot to do with how we teach languages here. I've always said, to my predecessor, that I think language has to be taught in a very immersive way. I'm not certain if that's happening with any language, to be honest, whether it's Dutch, French, or Spanish. I know what my experience was with language in school. It was not as immersive across the board. And I think that does play a role. I would like to see that we embrace multilingual education at the end of the day, that we have children that can speak, 2 to 3 languages as they do elsewhere. Especially in this region. And it's funny because when I was in Barbados for CariFesta last year, their Minister Chad Blackman, who was the Minister of Education Transformation, said to me, how can I get Dutch teachers to come to Barbados to teach Dutch Barbadian children Dutch?
Wow. Wow.
And I said, and that's a language I want to hear, and that accent very much. But
yeah.
so those are as the rest of the region also looks to how they can broaden access to different languages, in their education system.
Mhm.
We also have to see how we can improve how languages are taught here, so that across the board, that it's something that, whether it's not your language spoken at home, that you are still learning well in that in that language. Yeah.
Mandarin is taught in Antigua and Barbuda.
Yes, it is.
I was shocked to see.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, as they have quite some economic development ventures with China, so it would for them it makes sense.
Right.
But I think if it were to be something that we're offered here, we should also again, the more, if I could pick something that I would have chosen to learn 15 years ago, it might be that.
Mhm. How about library? You mentioned library. How are we coming
Yes.
along with the?
So that's one of the construction contracts that has to be signed and finalized. So that'll be part of the update I get this week. So hopefully next week I'll be able to provide an update to the public on the status of that, because that is also with Charles Leopold Bell.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Honorable Minister, in your opinion, let's talk about technology
Mhm.
in this generation. Do you believe that plays a factor in children's concentration and possibly low academic literacy on certain levels? Why I'm saying this is because we see the Netherlands and Australia was the first, actually, I believe it was, to ban cell phones in the schools. The Netherlands picked up on it, and I believe Curacao is also considering doing that.
Yeah.
Where they basically instituted a smartphone ban.
Yeah.
Similar tools in other schools as well to help with student concentration. Are we to that point where we can actually ban cell phones in
if
schools?
if that's a decision that has to be made, it will have to be taken with all stakeholders in conversation and discussion. I I'm always I'm a very tech loving person. I love a device, but at the end of the day, I also recognize that at a certain age, there should be no device present. You need to, and if there is a device present, then it needs to be in heavy moderation. Even to, I've spoken about the things that they watch on YouTube and so forth. I know a lot of parents that will plop their kid down in front of Cocomelon, but Cocomelon has actual studies showing that it developmentally delays your kid. From a speech perspective, the way that certain animated shows move these days, I think they liken some of it to torture, actually, because your brain can't process that many images coming at you. If you look back at what we were watching, little Sesame Street here, little Fraggle Rock, little Muppet Babies, it moved at a slower pace. So it was easy for us to digest. And now, though, you see like different studies pop up where what kids are watching, it's too fast for them. They can't absorb it. And then you get these delays in their development, especially from a speech perspective. But you know what's also interesting? And this is a conversation that a nurse was having with some folks at an event that I was at. And she said, we also have to look from a VSA, public health perspective. How are the pregnancies going? Do mothers have access to proper prenatal care? Was it a rough pregnancy? Were there challenges during the birth? Was it a difficult birth? And I never thought about that, but indeed, she as a nurse said that when she looks at certain kids and she has conversations with the mothers, with the parents in general, maybe, there was not enough prenatal care. Maybe there was distress during the pregnancy to the fetus, distress during the birth. And, being without oxygen even for 10 seconds could cause a speech delay, a speech development delay on the other end. And so she also discussed that has to be part of the conversation that ECYS has, with VSA. How are pregnancies going? After that, what age do you give your child a device? 2-year-olds, I don't think should have anything but some building blocks and felt letters, to play around with. And I myself, with my friends, with my younger cousins, when they were born, my aunt asked, should I get him at I think it was 5 or 6, maybe I get him a Nintendo? I said, absolutely not. That's something you get maybe 9, 10 years old, because you don't want to develop bad habits, even as a gamer, at an early age, because it's going to be very hard to break them out of it. And, myself and Marvy have spoken about this. When it comes to gaming, when it comes to technology use, it's in moderation. You have to set those times. I encourage all parents to learn about the parental controls that iPads and other devices have. Your phone, your own iPad or your iPhone can say at 7 p.m. we lock off the iPad. That's it. Go to sleep, or pick up a paper book and read that. Because even from that questionnaire, most students responded that the majority said they don't use any learning apps or anything like that. So the argument that they're using it for education is null and void. If you're not on a Kindle app reading a book, or you're not, playing a math game or a word game to build your literacy and numeracy skills, then you shouldn't have the tablet on after a certain hour.
And that's why China is ahead of us.
Yeah, they themselves will tell you they regulate device access. There is no, it's not that you're born and you get a laptop in your hand. It's the foundation, the fundamentals first, and the device after. And I think, to even say, I've heard the argument that, but they become more technologically skilled on these. They don't actually. It's proven that tablets and such, they do not build any tech skills at all. What actually builds tech skills, if you want to give your kid a device when they're maybe 8 or so, a laptop. Because you don't have just image recognition of an app logo to press it and to go in. It does not develop any kind of tech skills in you to be using a tablet or an iPad, actually, which is something that most parents will not know. But if you want to build tech skills, coding skills, and so forth, give them a laptop. Just a little, little cheap Chromebook. Let them bang on that keyboard for a bit, figure out, commands and and other such programming languages, and it'll be good.
Right. So Mark Zuckerberg, a few weeks ago, I think it was calling to Congress to answer questions regarding I believe it was Instagram,
Yes.
where it was leading to some young people, actually teenagers in particular, were committing suicide
Mm-hmm.
because of what they see on social media.
Yep.
Can we really regulate that here, though? It's out of control. We can't really regulate what you're watching.
I think it's tough to regulate it at this point. We've kind of let it get so far, and I preferred social media, especially Facebook, when it was a little more restricted. That I think it's also about having conversations with teenagers, especially at a young age. Not even teenagers. You have to start from 10. You have to start from 6 about what is real and what is not. That social media depicts some version of somebody's life that they want you to see, but also again teaching them how to lock off their profiles. First of all, I want to be clear. I don't believe anybody under the age of 17 should have a social media profile. I think I've been shocked to hear that there are kids as young as 10 or 11 that see me on TikTok, for example. Why?
Seeing you on TikTok.
Yeah, because I do my live on TikTok as well.
Okay.
But so I always try to keep it PG these days. So I think it's also about parents to explain to their kids, to have those deeper conversations about what is real, and to also address their mental health and mental health challenges. Teenagers in particular are going through a litany of changes that adults should be able to guide them through. You can't take them through it. And I think we have a culture now where we prefer to just pretend that something is not there. Well, my child don't be watching this at home. Okay, your child is not at home 24/7. Your child is not just exposed to what you want them to be exposed to 24/7. They are going to be exposed to different things in their school environment by their peers, and you have to have those conversations with them. I also think that from a school perspective, a bit more education on what how do I say, trying to be politically correct sometimes, a bit more attention on actually addressing what kids are being bullied for, and when it maybe is not in line with what you think kids do know, recognizing that they know and that they're going to be bullied for it. And no handbook can protect them from that, basically.
Right. So on that note now, how will AI be incorporated into the classroom in a way that promotes critical thinking?
Yes. So we're actually engaged with UNESCO on drafting the National AI in Education Policy, and then stakeholder consultations are going to take place following that. And I think the focus is more going to be on responsible use of AI, not so much a heavy focus on generative AI, and also AI in helping teachers complete their own administrative tasks and such, so that we can get the proper tracking that is needed for student progress and student development can be incorporated into that as well. I don't, we're not trying to focus on having AI write your homework for you or read for you. I find I'm actually horrified when people say that AI can do the reading for students. So why do they need to know how to read? Because I've seen the examples of when you're asking AI how many R's are there in strawberry, and AI says there's 2, and we all know that there's more than 2. So
3.
yeah, there's 3. Exactly. But so if that's not the direction that we're going. It's more to the responsible deployment of AI, using artificial intelligence in developing, for example, robotics, the real coding back end side of it, because it's not about telling it, I need you to write me a book report. No, it's about critical use of it, engaging in those apps that do actually develop those skills. And those skills require the fundamentals.
But isn't this the future?
Yeah, it most definitely is. But I think it's not the future in eliminating human creativity. And that's, I think, my biggest challenge with AI. At the end of the day, and this is something that I also asked Mr. Senghor when we were at USM in that conversation, because he spoke about writing his first 2 books in prison by hand. So on paper, just writing by hand. And I asked him, you come out of prison and you find that the whole world has changed and that people are basically publishing AI slop. What does that say to you? And he's like, I firmly believe I use a laptop now to, write because, it's faster, but I still do certain things by hand. I journal by hand. I would literally write down a 5-page outline of a book idea by hand, because using that fine motor skill, it's not just about the art of creativity and the art of writing. It's also about maintaining dexterity in your limbs. If you're not writing by hand, at least, once or twice a week, by the time you're 50, 55, your hands are going to start to, you're going to start losing dexterity in your fingers. You have to look at it from, if we talk about public health, staving off non-communicable diseases, how do you keep the brain sharp if you're not using your brain in connection with the motor skills of your hand, So all of that plays a role. And I think that is the tact or the direction that we're kind of going with technology in the classroom, that it has to, we have to get back to the basics. And if, again, Mark Zuckerberg himself said that, I think he was fined for running an illegal school out of his house or so. But ultimately, he himself will say, and most tech people will say, they don't give their kids devices. They don't give their kids devices because the fundamentals of writing, of typing, of using your brain connected with your motor skills is what they themselves are. So if we look at if the world's richest are telling you that, no, my kids don't have a device until they're, maybe 17 or 18 or whatever. My kids have to be able to write by hand, that is, to me, says something.
Right.
And I think instead of, Marvia says a lot that we consume a lot and we don't produce. We can continue this circle of consumption, or we can say that we want to actually produce, students who then enter a workforce with the foundational skills that are met, and that we're not relying on technology, because ultimately it is more than just learning and working. It is about yourself as a person, as a human being, maintaining those foundational skills that keep your body moving as it's meant to move, and that keeps you moving into your old age. A lot of times you see the comparison of that movie WALL-E, a Disney movie with the Earth is destroyed, so they're in a spaceship, kind of circling space, waiting for Earth to kind of heal itself. But basically, on the ship, all the humans are, they're super overweight. They're in a chair all day, being shuffled around by a motorized chair, looking at a screen. They can't walk because of muscle atrophy. They can't basically hold anything but like a cup or whatever. And I think that message went beyond even just pollution. It also went to tell you, this is what happens if you're not using your foundational skills of walking, talking, etc. Oh yeah,
no, not you.
Yes, your fitness tracker. Yeah.
Telling me time to get up.
Yeah, time to get up, time to move, time to drink some water.
So
it's time for me to drink some water, actually. But so I think the conversation around technology and education is not just about, the jobs of the future. We don't want to create drones. That's the direction that we're heading. If we just focus on, teaching kids about generative AI and such, there's a whole back end that they can learn that requires them to have the basics: reading, writing, mathematics, typing, using their hands. Ultimately, someone is using their hands to code the generative AI that you're using to then, create some image or whatever.
And Minister, while you're on that topic, last week I was reading somewhere on the internet where that it states here that if you write a shopping list, if you're going to the supermarket and you write your shopping list in comparison to writing it and texting it and writing it on your computer, you'll remember at least 50% of what you wrote when you get to the supermarket. Because of
the connection with the brain. Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, I was like, that is so true.
Because
I always write a
me too.
Go to the supermarket.
When I was young, my mom and we had a little pen in food center just marking off. Hey, did you get an eggs? I did.
You still see people do that.
Yeah.
But it is so true because I always write my shopping list when I go to the supermarket. And then the other day I forgot it. But you know what? It was like, if it was 12 items, I probably forgot 4.
Yeah.
I probably forgot 4 because it was all registered in my brain.
Yes.
And I was like, that's amazing. So after that, I was like, that is so true.
It is true, yeah. And I think, and like I said, that goes beyond just a conversation of technology. Technology exists because someone with the basic skills of reading, writing, and mathematics is writing a program that's developing an algorithm to give you that technology that just makes you press buttons.
Yeah.
But there is a whole world behind the buttons. And I don't want our kids to be the button pressers. I would like them to be the ones that are writing the programs behind the button.
And don't call us old school.
Yes.
Don't call us old school.
Most don't know. Like, for example, if we look at I look at like Marvio, right? Policy advisor in my cabinet.
Mhm.
When Marvio is when we're mapping something out that we want to put into a program, into software, whatever, we do it on paper first. We do a paper test
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
and then it goes into the program. It literally, innovation starts with the basics.
Mhm.
The basics are reading, writing, and
Writing.
mathematics.
Right. Yeah. Minister, if we can veer off course for a moment and touch on something vital for some individuals. Now, why haven't we been able to adopt or try to formalize the process for St. Martin National Anthem?
That is a conversation I have to have with the Department of Culture, because I know that there was a competition that was supposed to be held. I think that was in the early days of country St. Martin. It has not been something that we've discussed as yet. I will admit that. It was noted that it was supposed to be a project that was executed, but we haven't touched on it as yet. So as we're now getting into planning out, also updating the integrated culture policy framework that was last ratified in 2007 and has not been updated or reviewed since. So as we get into that with the department and other stakeholders, then that can be a topic of conversation that we veer into.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're looking into it.
Yeah.
Because people are asking for the longest while now.
What is the status? Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I love the Saman song. I like it, but I know that it's technically doesn't belong to us. But that's also something that I'm willing to discuss as well in terms of the ownership of that and how we can better regulate that for ourselves. But yeah, that's part of the long-term discussion on updating that culture policy framework.
You are 4 members from the PFP party, 2 ministers, Minister of Romy, yourself as a minister of ECYS. You have 2 members of parliament representing in parliament. How is the communication between the 4 going so far?
No, it's going well.
How's it working?
It's working well. Sometimes, I still send a sticker, the sticker of a reaction stickers. Maybe things are on fire. I think everybody knows it well, and just trying to keep touch and keep a handle on, the goings-ons. I think, like I said, there's some realities that we have to face as a country, and it's always curious to me to hear persons that know a bit, because of the time that they spent in there, and then to question, well, is it that reality? Yeah, it is. And I've said, it's never nice to say we can't because we don't have it. But that's something I'm very upfront with, especially our 2 members of parliament about. And I think that especially coming from MPW, she was already a minister, so she knows, I think, a bit of the reality that's facing St. Martin, and that was from 4 years ago. If I think, to where we are right now, there's a lot of that has been done. There's harsh conversations that we have had, and yeah, especially ministry that faces budget cuts every time, that faces challenges in an increasingly expensive in educational world. Again, this is across the board. Education costs money everywhere. It requires heavy investment. It's to see how we can refocus and center ourselves and actually deploy resources in a more responsible manner, because that's also part of it. A lot of irresponsible spending and financial management. I've met invoices from 2023 for service providers, and that leads to a lot of the challenges that we're facing today. I'm in Parliament next week, actually, to talk about some supply issues at public schools. But yeah, and I was meant to be there tomorrow, but I requested, I'm unable to make it, trying to finalize some data collection to be able to give a good picture, to give the full picture to Parliament, but also to the public. Because I think it's disingenuous to say, well, why don't we have XYZ when you know the fiscal reality facing us as a ministry and as a country. Yeah. My father has always said, we love to drink champagne on a Coca-Cola budget. And at this point, I think the budget is a bit more on a water side.
Wow.
Yeah. Not even club soda. Club soda is expensive.
That too. Yeah. You're attending a minister parliament next week for a meeting?
Yes. It's a public meeting that was requested to discuss the sanitary conditions and cleaning supplies in public schools.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. You've not been attending COM meetings. Why is that?
I've been in COM, Council of Ministers meetings, or you mean press briefing?
Press briefing.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I said, I have chosen the way that I would like to engage with the public. And I think I believe that there has to be respectful engagement across the board. If I am going to go into an area showing respect, then I believe that, in particular, as representatives of the country, respect needs to be shown as well. I'm not in the business of subjecting myself to planted questions. I don't pay nobody to ask me certain questions. So I think that for me, I'm not going to engage in that way because I believe even when you engage respectfully, the message that goes out is very much twisted. And I know everybody has a job to do, everybody plays their role, but I never even used to read the National Enquirer. So I'm not about to start talking to something like it now. And that's just my standpoint. I think that, I try to do a good job of communicating via the live stream because that is a lot of ways in which persons digest information on Samartan now. I'm very happy and grateful that certain media outlets have picked up, are able to sit and have the listening comprehension to listen to what I say and digest it and then, spread that message. And I think that it works out well. So for me, I think that I can do a lot more with an hour in my office. There's a lot that has to be done. And so that's why I make that choice because Tuesdays is the live stream, 8:30, on live on my YouTube. And I will always pop by, to the breakfast lounge and to everywhere that
Absolutely.
when I have the time, because sometimes you literally don't have the time. And sometimes somebody asked me one day, they were like, long time I see you. I say, long time I see myself.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah.
People say I look like I'm getting younger, and I have to take their word for it because, mirrors are a luxury.
Minister, in closing, I want to thank you so much for reaching out and, of course, for having you here this morning. In closing, what would you like to say to the audience, the viewers?
I would like to say, there's going to be other results that come out. We completed the FBE review as well, and those results are going to be made public in the coming quarter of the year. And I think, they're not going to be bright. They're not going to be encouraging. It can get very discouraging, but I think that is if we leave that be the attitude that sinks in, we've already lost. Education, culture, youth, and sport is, to me, and I said it at the beginning of my term, the most important ministry on this island. It is the ministry that produces your future doctors, the ministry that produces your future carpenters, your future lawyers, your future judges, your future radio personalities, your future media elements. And that is why I think for me, literacy is so important, because even for the carpenter, he has to know how to recognize numbers, how to read, because if you don't, you're not gonna know what a 2x4 is versus a 2x16. And I think
yes. Everything is numbers.
Everything is numbers. Even when it comes to music, because you see that as well, where people feel like in the creative arts you don't need the basics. You do. You need to know how do you count a beat count if you can't count. So it's going to take all of us. I know my responsibility to make sure that we facilitate as much as possible the resources that are needed. But I also need private sector, parents, everybody to also take up the mantle and take up their share of the responsibility. For private sector, these are going to be the persons that you will be interviewing to put in your customer service desks, that you will be putting in your banks, even in your restaurants. And if they can't read a menu, they can't tally a bill, it also impacts your bottom line. So be a bit more attentive to education. Encourage those in your employment that have children. Allow them the time to go to report card evening. Because I hear those complaints as well. As a manager, I'm like, if you have children, go to get a report card because it's important.
Talk to the teacher.
Talk to the teacher. Don't be to the point where your bottom line matters more than a parent going to pick up the report card and have a conversation with the teacher. Because at the end of the day, it's going to come back and impact. Whether today or when you're in the White Yellow Cross and Care Home and you're a nurse and there is no nurse because we couldn't produce a nurse because the children can't read and count. All of that is part of education. That's why I say it is a communal effort. And when I first saw is it Mac? Yeah, Mac's slogan, "From the cradle to the grave," I was like, "Ooh, that's morbid," but indeed, education from the cradle to the grave is important because it's going to impact you from your cradle to your grave. The nurses, the doctors, the janitors, everybody has a role in how you as a person experience life. And I think it's important that we recognize that and collectively address it. If I got to be the one on the radio reading newspaper out loud to the kiddos, then let's do it. But we have to get back to that point from a media perspective, instead of spending time, trying to tear down things, maybe try to build them up and get it back to where literacy is cool again.
Yeah, everywhere you go, you're going to ask for numbers. You go to the doctor's office, they ask you, what's your weight? What's your weight?
But not only that, Grace, if you think about it from an adult perspective, like if you can't read a prescription bottle,
that too.
And I say it all the time, if you can't read a prescription bottle, what happens?
Yeah.
Take
the wrong medication.
Yeah, and it has an impact. I remember once I was asking a friend at GEBE, what are you guys doing to impact and to hire more locals? They said we got some guys in as sort of interns. They can't recognize certain numbers. They're inverting numbers on a gauge. If you're reading an engine, you get a number wrong. What happens then? All of this plays a role, guys. So literacy, being able to reading numbers is important. And it takes all of us.
All right. And on a final note, Heineken Regatta this weekend.
Yes.
Are you sailing?
I will be on the broadcast boat with Island 92 on Saturday. Very excited.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I did it last year.
You just got into this broadcasting thing, huh? Look at you.
I mean,
you like it.
Maybe I have, always looking for the next career. Retirement is,
Okay.
But no, so I enjoy it because it gave me the opportunity last year to talk about how even that is an option for students, our maritime sector, getting into being a captain. I did my captain's license because I really love being on the water. I really love boats. I really love sharks. So Nature Foundation will sometimes take me out, so I think it's important as well to show that there's different avenues than culinary in the vocational education sector. So I will be on the broadcast boat on Saturday. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Nice. All right.
And the weather looking good for it too. So it should be. We should have some nice races.
Okay, good. We only have about 100 boats this year.
Yeah.
I understand it's becoming quite competitive and quite challenging.
Yes.
Because, Now, good. Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this interview.
Thank you for having me
with you this morning. And to the viewers, of course, I want to thank you all for watching on my page. Yeah. And of course, to you, the radio listeners. Tomorrow morning, I'll be back here once again from 7 until 10.